This week on Wookie Drives, I come to you in memoriam of the big GM Sedan. Sure, the Malibu has grown to fill a similar role, and Cadillac is still doing Cadillac things. But no, I'm talking about big ol' full-size GM boats of old, and how the Sedanocalypse was the final death blow to some of GM's bread and butter. This week, I drive the 2014 Chevrolet Impala LT. The 10th and final generation Chevrolet Impala. A swan song to not just the famed nameplate, but the big GM sedan as a whole. I've talked about the Sedanocalypse in length many times before, and early on in the channel I made 2 videos with a rental Ford Fusion back in 2019. But when this generation of Impala wowed us after years of white bread front-wheel drive Impalas with a stunning retro yet modern styling in 2013, we didn't know that this class of car would absolutely crater as the decade went on. The crossover was here to stay, as much as car enthusiasts cried everywhere as classic models would get the axe in favor of egg-shaped people movers. The Impala had long been Chevrolet's flagship sedan since the mid-90s, and before that was twinned with the slightly more expensive Caprice. And before that, the Impala was a proud beacon of American exceptionalism for Chevrolet in the late 50s and 60s. And that's why when it was time for Chevrolet to replace the Lumina for the new millennium, Chevrolet chose to bring back the Impala name for old nostalgia's sake. Of course, a lot of boomers saw the shift from a body-on-frame, rear-wheel drive, V8 powered sedan to a front-wheel drive, W-body platform as a stab in the heart, but it was a move that helped sell a lot of cars. Now, the 9th generation that followed, I admit, wasn't nearly the best. It was an example of Chevrolet and GM simply printing out a simple design that not just lacked the prestige of earlier Impalas, but lacked a lot of the charm of 90s W-body cars that made those cars so beloved by GM nerds. Even slapping an LS under the hood of the SS model couldn't shake that feeling for me. And the 9th generation would trudge along for 10 model years as well. In the end, it was called GM's Crown Victoria, even though I would argue that it lacked everything that made the Crown Victoria so good. It was a car of a bankruptcy-era GM. Not exactly good, but available in a weird variant that was destined to get a cult following in the long run. So following the bankruptcy and the emergence of new GM, the Impala was in bad need of a clean slate design to truly make a statement that this was Chevy's flagship, the top of the heap. And boy oh boy they did. While the 8th and 9th generation Impalas were bland blobs of the aughts, the 10th generation, launched for the 2014 model year, somehow harkened back to the Impalas of the 50s and early 60s, but still looked modern. It had a street presence that hadn't been felt by an Impala in years. Gone was the old W-body. In was a stretched version of GM's modern Epsilon 2 platform, known as the Epsilon 2 long wheelbase. Modern power plants, such as direct-injected 4-cylinders and a mild hybrid. This is what the previous 2 Impalas should have been, instead of being the amorphous blobs they were. But it was not to be. As much as the leap forward the 10th generation Impala was, its days would forever be numbered. Sales had been slipping slowly since 2007, and even though the Impala would increase its market share in 2014 in the full-size sedan segment, it couldn't fend off the increased demand for SUVs and crossovers. While sedans across all segments would get hit, it was the large full-size sedans that took the biggest hits. Once GM's bread and butter, their golden geese, they were increasingly seen as dinosaurs by the buy-in public. Yeah, the trunk is enormous and could fit a few bodies in it. Yes, the back seat is large and comfy. But for just $1,000 more at base, one could get a Traverse with a third-row seat and almost an infinite more cargo space. In a decade where more and more became the demand, the math simply didn't math, and buyers started ignoring the Impala and GM had to make a tough decision. The Impala wasn't supposed to die when it did. In fact, despite Ford leading the way in X and all of its non-Mustang cars, and Chrysler just kind of having all theirs just gradually disappear over time, Mary Barra had insisted that GM had no plans on exiting the sedan market. But in a few short years, enough was enough. The bean counters had won. While Ford had cut its cars simply all at once, Chevy and GM as a whole cut theirs in phases. First was the Cruze and the Volt, next the Impala and the Sonic, then the Spark, then the Bolt. Soon, all that there was left were the Malibu, the Camaro, and the Corvette. The Vet is the Vet. It will forever be part of Chevy's lineup. In fact, there have been long simmering plans to make it into a line of vehicles like Ford has done with the Mustang. The Camaro's days are now numbered. The refreshed 6th Gen styling was not well received and has had slip in sales for years now. But somehow the Malibu has persisted. It's large, it's cheap, it's relatively reliable, it's cheap for GM to produce, and Chevy can sell a metric shit ton in rental fleets. And as I record this, GM has just announced that the 9th Gen Malibu will be phased out by the end of 2024, so there goes this script, but oh well, where was I? The Impala unfortunately didn't have the strength of rental fleet sales and a sub $20,000 starting price to entice younger buyers into it. It was meant to be an aspirational purchase for someone, and unfortunately people with $30,000 would rather have a large SUV. So, enough of waxing poetic. Let's talk about the Impala itself. As mentioned before, the 10th generation Impala moved away from GM's old W-body architecture to an updated version of its modern mid-size/full-size front-wheel drive architecture, the Epsilon 2 long wheelbase. It shares this chassis with the Cadillac XTS, the 2nd generation Buick LaCrosse, and the Chinese market Rowei 950. Under the hood, you get 3 engine options: the base 2.5-liter Ecotec LKW i4 in LS and LT models, the 3.6-liter high-feature LFX V6 in LTZ and later Premier models, and a mild hybrid version known as the e-Assist that uses a 2.4-liter Ecotec LUK i4 and attaches a belt-actuated starter hybrid system that uses a 115-volt Hitachi aluminum battery and a 112-kilowatt electric motor to it. While cool that Chevy introduced a mild hybrid version to the Impala, they sold extremely poorly, which is something I'd imagine has to do with Chevy not really advertising the fact that they were even making the dang thing. Moving on, everything but the e-Assist had their engines attached to a 6-speed 6T70 automatic transaxle, while the e-Assist uses a 6-speed 6T40 automatic transaxle. And of course, power sent to the front wheels. All-wheel drive was not an option. Out on the road, if you've driven a rental Malibu in recent years, well, it drives almost exactly like that. Not particularly engaging, but not a terrible experience in itself. This is supposed to be a comfy cruiser on a budget, and this does this well. It rides well, the 2.5-liter Ecotec 4-banger is smooth, and the 6-speed transaxle is as inoffensive as it needs to be. It's well optioned for a 2014 car, and its slightly larger size means that it has more front and rear legroom over my 9th generation Malibu. And that's saying something because the final gen Impala and current Malibu are very close in size. They share a near identical wheelbase and width. The Impala is a touch longer thanks to its longer overhangs, and the Impala is 1.6 inches taller. But I will admit the Impala has a bunch more cargo space thanks to its cavernous trunk. My lord, I could nearly lay down flat in it. It was that big, and I'm 6'3". I'm not a small guy. Now, in terms of fit and finish over the last 10 years, yeah, there are concerns. But I have to be realistic here, the previous owner of this car did not take care of it well at all. There's a dent on the trunk lid where they punched it in a fit of rage, cause yeah, the car definitely deserved that. There's marks on the driver's side door jamb where someone tried to shimmy into it. The cover on the driver's side door lock is missing. The interior smells of stale cigarette sand is stained. and it was involved in an accident 3 years ago, which is how the current owners, Garrett and Kate, have acquired it. The factory radio has died, and that's something with these screen-based infotainment systems that we really have to start worrying about as these cars age. As time moves on, these systems become rapidly out of date, and they're more expensive to replace compared to classic double-din stereo systems. And aside from that, you can see that the plastic dash trim is starting to come loose. It's not really, not really good. Also, something that I myself is experiencing with my 2019 Malibu, the piano black B-pillars are no longer piano black. It just kind of peels away over time. Nothing I can really do to stop it. And as you can see on this Impala, it's almost entirely gone and it just looks like someone just buffed the B-pillars. It looks alright new, but man, this finish that Chevy insisted on using on their 2010 cars does not hold up well on the exterior. But despite the abuse that this car has faced, despite its apparent GM-ness as time rolls on, the final generation Chevrolet Impala is still a decent car. A dinosaur in the age of computers. The buy-in public really doesn't want or need a full-size Chevy sedan aimed at cruising. There is a need for a small, cheap sedan in Chevy's lineup, but honestly, the largest sedans have been supplemented by their ever-growing crossover lineup. The final Impala was a throwback to a bygone past, a final flash of inspiration that brought some style back to a nameplate that had lacked it for decades. While the previous couple of Impalas lacked any of that, this one was a car that could make your granddad proud. Just a decent big car. 2014 Chevrolet Impala LT, the end of the big Chevrolet sedan. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you once again for watching another episode of Wookie Drives. Huge shout out to my friends Garrett and Kate of Statesville, North Carolina for letting me drive their recently acquired 2014 Chevrolet Impala for this show. If you have a car or truck you'd like to see on the show and happen to be in the Charlotte or Mooresville, North Carolina area, submit your car to wookiedrives@gmail.com. That's right, email me with a submission of your car to wookiedrives@gmail.com. That's wookiedrives@gmail.com. Don't forget to give the video a like, drop a comment with some feedback. Any sort of interaction with this video really helps small channels like mine grow in the algorithm. Share with all your big GM car friends. And finally, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell for more Wookie Drives like these. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.
This car, where did it come from? When did it come to life? What hands crafted the look? What minds created the technology? It happened here. This is America's Chevrolet, and this is the all-new Impala. And this is where to find it in Southern California. Look for the blue arch and pay just $269 a month. Then just enjoy the ride. Find new roads at your Southern California Chevy dealer.